Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, welcome to another episode, and this one is called When You Lose Your Way. Now, I think everybody loses their way. I think not everybody would admit it, but definitely I think it's part of the human condition, although I do believe that a large amount of it is unnecessary, and I think a huge amount of feeling like you've lost your way is very much mental, it's inner, and I think it can be reduced. But if you think about an adventurer or an explorer, if I think about, say, for example, and this is obviously me guessing because I wasn't there, but if I was on one of the boats with Christopher Columbus when he was going out to explore and trying to find the Americas, I think we'd all assume that at various points we probably would lose our way. We would encounter obstacles we hadn't expected. We would feel lost at times. But I think the main thing in that kind of context is that you don't flip out when it happens. I mean, it would be unrealistic to assume that you wouldn't. And so why would it be any different if you're an adventurer or an explorer in business or in life? I think maybe the only people who don't feel that they lose their way are people who just play it really, really safe. And so everything is predictable, controllable. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's living. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in that vein, I would think, because you're curious. I'm guessing you're open to exploring. So I think it's part of the human condition, and I think we can all get caught up with it, and that's what I want to explore a little bit today. Now, for me, there are two main types of losing your way. The first one is when you feel like you've lost your way. Thinking, okay, I definitely feel lost. I'm not sure which way to go. Maybe that affects my confidence. So that's the first one. And the second one is a little bit more sometimes difficult for the person to pick out, but it's when you get caught up with your ego and you lose your way and you don't realize it. And that can be more damaging perhaps in a different type of way. And I'm going to just share a few thoughts about both of those. I mean, and I think losing your way could be in the context of you. The obvious one is in you in terms of maybe your career, your business, but also it can come into things like your relationships, your personal life. What's it all for? Is this it? And I think because, again, this is the inner edge, for me, the mind has all of these expectations built into it, most of them unconscious for us. And, kind of very often we will listen to the mind without realizing around, well, this is the way my life should be. This is kind of what should be happening. And then if that doesn't happen, that can throw the mind into turmoil, which is generally the start of losing your way. Because really, if you're feeling like you've lost your way, there is a direct cause and effect link between feeling and thinking. So it means you're thinking you've lost your way. But what would happen if you dropped it? Interesting. And then also I would say, I'll throw it out, is that I do think we should also consider the heart and the gut. Because if you're locked up in your head all the time, you will most likely lose your way, and you'll lose a sense of connection to maybe the deeper parts of yourself, maybe the deeper part of life. And even if we're looking at science, I mean, science in the last decade has proven that there are neurons now in your heart and a huge amount of neurons also in your gut, in your stomach lining. So your intelligence is communicating with you in different parts of your body. Now, I think my own guess in the next decade, they'll show that there's neurons all over the body is my own personal guess, but I can't prove that right now. But anyway, so I was listening to an interview recently on another podcast with the principal of Mercedes Formula One team, Toto Wolff, a German entrepreneur. And he has been the architect behind their incredible success over the last 7-8 years. I mean, obviously Lewis Hamilton is a supreme talent, but talent isn't everything. So it's not going to always guarantee you that you're going to achieve success, but he has been the guy that has brought in, stabilized the business machine. And either way, their track record ironically speaks for itself. So I think they've won the Formula One position there the last 7 years, and already this year in 2021 are out of the traps and going well. But what was interesting was, and I loved the fact that this guy is a very successful business person, now very successful in the sports world, in Formula One, and prioritizes family massively into the inner game of business and life. And that's what he was talking about. But also what I loved about him was he was very vulnerable, and he shared with the interviewers that he, when they were winning in the 7th year, that he actually felt like he completely lost his way. And he was very reliant on the team around him to kind of almost carry him along, which I thought was interesting. And in a way, from my point of view, in terms of my own work, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me, because what you'll find is that he had set at this stall as a vision for almost like the 7 years as a massive, massive goal. And then when you get there, it's like, okay, now we're there. So is this it? And now what? And it's funny because most people don't realize that their mind is so focused on achieving the goal that when you get there, and if you're somebody here who has achieved certain things that at one point you thought, oh, it'll be great when I get there. When you get there, that buzz doesn't last that long. It's a bit like buying a new car. You drive it out of the garage and maybe you get the buzz for a few weeks, but after that, it kind of goes away. And people don't realize that the mind, like where their attention goes in particular, like their attention is occupied in getting to the top of the mountain, whatever that represents to them. And then they get there and now it's gone. And they don't realize that attention, if it doesn't have somewhere to go like it used to, then it'll very often turn in on itself. And I think this is why you're going to hear increasingly more and more, I believe, that reflection, when you get into that kind of mode, reflection, where you stop, pause, you consider, you reflect on where you are, what's important to you, your values, just who you are, because it's always changing. Like as I've said to somebody recently, like who you are today is not who you were a year ago. So why, if that's the case, then why would you have the same goals? And reflection is an incredibly powerful tool. I think it's worth building in that space as you go along to avoid these big times when you can really lose your way. And he said he was very down. And this is kind of what happens. And I've seen this so many times. The story that came to mind when I was thinking about this episode was with a woman entrepreneur that I did some work with, and she had sold her business for a lot of money. And when we first met, it took her a while to admit that really the issue was she had lost her sense of purpose. She kind of got to the top of the mountain from her point of view, had made a lot of money, but it wasn't, in her words, quite what I thought it was going to be. And now she had lost her purpose. She had lost her way. But I think as we went through that, she started to realize that it was the business goal, getting that exit was what had brought her into the flow, what had given her a lot of purpose, and then it's taken away. So why wouldn't that sense of flow go away? But the reality is, in my world, is that flow is when you're not overly thinking. You're not allowing yourself to get distracted with your inner thoughts. Most people think that, well, I need to find a new goal, and when I find that new goal, then I'll be fine. And that's partly true, but it's kind of missing the real opportunity of understanding that actually, your ability to kind of be in the moment, actually be present and not get caught up with thought, is actually what allows you more and more to go into the flow, which means you can be going into the flow doing anything, like washing the dishes. And as I'm going on along in my life, that's what I'm seeing more and more, that I'm having more and more time in the flow doing things that previously I would have thought would just be boring. And then I'm thinking of another entrepreneur now that, he would have said to me a while back that, well, look, if he had a kind of a difficult circumstance going back to the crash, and said, well, if this hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be like this, in terms of he was in it as a negative. But they're actually better because of that difficult time, because they lost their way. They were forced to dig deep. And a lot of the time people will look back and have regret over what they would call unfortunate circumstances or difficult circumstances. And they can be quite severe in many contexts. But most people, I think, when they're calm and reflect, they'll probably always look back and say, well, actually, if that hadn't happened, well, then I wouldn't be like this, and this wouldn't have happened. So is losing your way really losing your way? Or is it perhaps life's way sometimes of helping you self-correct, or helping you get stronger, or helping you see something you hadn't seen before? So going on to type 2 then is, where you lose your way because of your ego. And there's many different examples here that come to mind for me, but maybe the simplest one would be around where success, when you become successful or achieve something that at one point you thought was impossible, and now you've achieved some level of success, could be making a lot of money, winning an award, growing a business where now you're the top dog, man or woman. But then your success also can become this blind spot that you actually start to kind of think, well, nothing could go wrong, as I know, like you're surrounded by people who just say yes to you all the time. And I think just to kind of put myself under the microscope here, we'll see if this analogy holds up. I'm a big fan of hiking. I love hiking. I live in Wicklow in Ireland and very close, about 25 minutes from Glendalough, which is a massive part of a massive national park. Beautiful scenery, beautiful hills and hiking area. And for me, that's where I would go to just reconnect, reflect, just recharge the batteries, just get out of my head and just go into life. And I remember a colleague of mine said to me, because sometimes I'll take clients up there for a walk, either one-to-one or sometimes in a group. And he said to me, you really need to kind of probably do a hiking course. And I said, what? A hiking course? Why would I bother with that? And he said, well, just, make sure that if you got lost or something happened, that you'd have the skills to kind of make sure that, because you're the leader when people are relying on you. And I said, that's ridiculous. So how much skills do you need for hiking? Well, anyway, fast forward a few months, there I am by myself on a kind of a wettish day going up for a hike. I went up and decided to go off-piste. So off a beaten track, up an area I hadn't been before. And of course, very quickly, out of nowhere, this fog came in. And I had lost my way. And the fog was incredibly thick. It was like one of these things that you'd maybe see in a movie or you'd hear about anecdotally. And there I was in the middle of it. It had happened to me. I'd lost my own way. I was on my own. So I remember talking to somebody who had said, like, when you're in that kind of situation, probably the most important thing is just to stop walking, because I remember hearing stories of people who literally walked off the side of a cliff because they were in a heavy fog, hadn't realized where they were going. They got completely disoriented. And that was happening to me. It was hilarious. I'm very good at spatial awareness and direction, but I had no clue where I was. I completely lost my way. And so I stopped and I sat down, and luckily I had the right kind of supplies with me. So I said, I'll just wait this out. And maybe after about an hour, my mind was playing tricks saying, oh, this could be down for the night. What's going to happen then? But I still held off. And then luckily enough for me, this couple was coming down the hill I was walking up. And they, I think, copped what was happening. And actually, the guy got really annoyed with me, probably overly annoyed with me. He was right to get annoyed because he was saying, like, I'm the kind of guy that at the time who, mountain rescue would have to come out and rescue, which was not necessarily untrue, but he literally flipped out. His wife had to calm him down. So anyway, after we all calmed down, I followed them down the mountain because they knew where they were going, and they had a map, and they had a compass. And when we got to the bottom, I remember thinking to myself, okay, my friend was right. I have to eat humble pie here. Just because I've walked hills and thought there was no skill attached, I've just got caught out and I need to learn the lesson. So I went off a couple of months later and I went on this weekend hiking course, and it was fantastic. And it opened my eyes to a whole world I didn't know exist. Yet again, Craddock had to eat humble pie and realized, oh my God, I remember it was a bit like learning about the mind or the inner game. You realize, oh, there's all these different things here. So I learned how to read a compass. I learned how to, so not read a map. Learned how to use a compass. And then we went out and we navigated. It was 10% theoretical, 90% out in the field, and it was brilliant. And the second day that we had massive fog, and the guy, the instructor said, like, this wouldn't be normal for this level, but we have fog, so we're going to use it to our advantage. And so we learned how to navigate through fog, and that was incredible. And part of what I learned was, there's the terrain. In reality, there's the map, and then there's the compass. But you also have to use your eyes and sometimes your gut. But you take things slowly, and you learn how to navigate through the fog, navigate through uncertainty. And when you have lost your way in life or in business, sometimes that's what you have to do. And the inner skills, I think, are where you have to rely on there. And the equivalent maybe of the map and the compass, I think your compass is your intuition or gut, and that works better when your mind is clear. That's why things like calming your mind down, through breathing or whatever works for you, or just allowing your head out of technology, and having a busy mind is bad for business, and it's really bad for life, and it's very bad for navigating through uncertainty or when you lose your way. And so personally for me now, when that happens, because it does happen periodically at different times for different reasons, I slow down deliberately. Sometimes I might step away from people, even my family, for a little bit, just to kind of listen to listen and tune into myself, my gut. Like what is my gut? What is my heart telling me? And I think most people are just too busy to realize that they are lost. Even they're just walking around in the fog, thinking, oh, not even having a clue that they're lost. So here's a question for you then. And I was being slagged off recently by somebody who listens to this podcast recently, but like that, I'm a big fan of the questions. And yes, I am a big fan of the questions, and they're going to continue. But what if where you are now isn't wrong? What if you might be thinking, listen to this, thinking, well, I feel like I'm a bit lost at the moment, but maybe tune into what your mind is saying about it. But what if you're exactly where you're meant to be? Maybe there's something for you to learn that's new. Maybe there's a new skill, a new direction. Or what if something new is waiting to come in? What if there's a new vision for you? Are you allowing yourself space for that vision to come in? Not to get it, but for allowing for it to come in. Or what if you need to leave an old part of you behind? What if you need to leave behind limitations on your business and your life or a way of doing things, or even within your relationships? And again, go back to Mr. Columbus. Like adventurers and explorers in life and business always lose their way. That's part of the process. And the key thing is not to let it freak you out too much. It's okay to get flipped out occasionally, because that's what'll happen, but not to throw yourself completely so it affects your confidence or you get too cloudy. So I think if you feel lost, maybe look at it as feedback, both in terms of your mind being too busy or listening to what your mind is saying, but also maybe your gut or your heart trying to tell you something. Because losing your way, while it can be uncomfortable, it could be the start of something really, really interesting, really exciting. And very often when you lose your way, sometimes it's the start of learning new skills, like me learning the skills of hiking. Because I think when you kind of learn, especially the inner skills of business and life, which are all hardwired into us to a degree, but then even if fog or whenever fog comes in, you tend to not flip out as much. You tend to kind of calm yourself down and say, that's okay. We're going to kind of navigate through this, take our time, and just make sure that the ego isn't in the way as well. Food for thought. Bye.